Hello, Sanjiv ji.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for being on this podcast today. Highly looking forward to speaking a lot with you, especially about, supplements in modern wellness industry and where does the synergy lie. So, before I start with my session, I would just very briefly want to introduce you to our listeners. And then, of course, I'll go ahead with my questions. So, Sanjiv Jagota is the founder and CEO of Nature's Source and Nature Signature, two of Canada's leading natural health product retailers. With over 30 years of experience in health and wellness industry, Sanjeev is widely recognized as a visionary in the space of integrative medicine and natural healing. So, I think your introduction very nicely justifies, what you have been into and what you're trying to do. And specifically, I have been personally looking a lot into. I mean, I've been at a place that you've created in Canada, and it's wonderful, I must say. So, over to you, Sanjeev ji, if you would just want to add on to your introduction and, what is it that you're offering in the Canadian and US markets, and then, of course, we can move on.
I appreciate that. I think there's a big need for integrative approach to health. People in general are looking for natural and less invasive ways of treating their health and also incorporating just a healthy lifestyle within their every
Absolutely.
day-to-day life.
True.
And yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I think I'll start with a very basic question. Considering the world of natural health products is something that that's something new. I mean, it's there for some time, but when you started this venture, this was about say 28 years back, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
And back then, there was not much awareness. I would say rather not much research also into natural health and wellness products. Rather, it was the pharma industry which was more ruling, and the only avenue that people knew for their health conditions was to go to the pharma world and seek for some medications for their conditions. So I think it was quite revolutionary back then to, have a space which only sells preventive healthcare products. So how has been your journey? I mean, in terms of, being a visionary 28 years back, having something which holds a lot of value today, but must have taken a lot of years to create awareness about what you're doing.
It wasn't easy to begin with. One of the first things I noticed when I got in the industry was the lack of information available to customers, practitioners, just generally. A lot of people were
Mm.
not aware of what was happening behind the scenes. And I was pleasantly surprised when I got in the industry how much research is out there, how much research is going on, but we just
Mm.
don't do a good enough job conveying it to the general public. So a lot of it is just sold off label opposed to what went into making the product, how was it formulated, where did it come from, how were the herbs grown. So there's a lot of importance on the education and understanding where the raw materials come from. So it wasn't easy because a lot of people initially didn't even understand the type of products and the products we were carrying because they
Okay.
weren't in the general public place to be found.
Yeah.
And
Okay. So,
go ahead.
sorry, yeah, just carry on. No, no, I mean, you can just carry on. I thought you're done there, but I think you have something else to say.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what, there was a lot of even struggle with us finding practitioners to work with, right? Because
Hmm.
you have
So
these
was that idea of being associated with the health experts, um, the original idea when you started your stores, or it just happened as a part of the journey when you realized, okay, education is something which is mandatory for this, to be able to be successful.
the practitioners, to be honest with you, we stumbled on it. We used to get patients from a practitioner on a regular basis.
Hmm.
And I learned, having been in pharma before, that you respect the recommendation of a practitioner, and they kept coming into the store with the recommendations and we would turn them away. And then I
Hmm.
went to go see the practitioner. We went to go see the practitioner and said, what is it that you do? And then we really quickly realized, if we're going to help our clients succeed, we have to partner with the best of the best in their fields in order to help our clients achieve their health goals a lot faster. So it was part of the journey, and I'm glad we
Mhm.
did it, because countless times we get feedback from customers because they don't know who to go see and when to go see them. So it's important that be part of the process of, just taking care of your health and wellness.
Absolutely, and I think that has been a very revolutionary idea because a lot of people are just benefiting out of because I see a lot of people just walking in and they don't even know that they have their conditions may be something related to some lack of supplementation or maybe some natural health products can help them just heal without even going to a doctor or medication. So being a health expert there guiding people, I think it's wonderful. So okay, so I believe when you started there wasn't much awareness and knowledge about what's in the health industry, what's going on. So education, of course, I understand, partnering with these experts was one part of it. Were there other ways you were using to kind of educate people or help them understand about the benefits of what you were selling? So, people are more educative enough and
Yes.
self-decision makers.
It's funny you say that. So we started advertising in local newspapers, in the national newspaper, and we used to get positioned in parts of the newspaper that no one would ever read. So then I called them in and I
Oh,
said, look, the reason why my advertisers or our vendors don't want to advertise with you, because nobody knows this section where we are. And I
okay.
asked, what does it take for me to work to get to the better part of the
Mhm.
newspaper? And they listened to us. And even what I learned from them was they wanted the education. So when it came
Right.
down to prostate health or women's health, we as an industry weren't even aligned with the national programs. So that was the other thing I worked with, was
Mhm.
our media people outside, and say, okay, when do you celebrate men's health, when do you celebrate women's health, and how did that align up with our industry's approach, so that the
Mhm.
messaging was better. And that was a really tough sell in the beginning, because we would advertise these products that people didn't know, and then we realized it's one thing to educate in the stores, it's another thing to educate on a larger scale. And we
Right.
always used to accompany it with editorial if we could.
Okay. So no, that's amazing. I think it's just working wonderfully. I mean, I have been personally visiting the stores and buying a lot of stuff myself, realizing that a lot of things that even I do not knew back then, are just working for me without thinking of being going to a doctor or just looking out for my deficiencies and looking solutions for those. So the health experts are, I must say, are doing wonderful job, and along with the education that you're talking about, which as of now I see there's a lot of education in terms of a lot of content available on your website, the magazine that you guys publish, and a lot of information coming in through that. So that seems like a complete source.
Yeah, and part of the journey was, over the years I've published 2 peer-reviewed medical journals on integrative medicine. And it's
Hmm.
funny on how many medical doctors would call us and say, do you know
Hmm.
of a practitioner that will work in my office? Because
Oh,
we were
wow.
presenting them the research at their level, that they could
Hmm.
actually see the references on the studies and research. And we used to really even be selective on who could advertise in our journals, because we wanted to make sure that the information wasn't advertorial. It was more of a
Okay.
scientific, evidence-based research. And for me, to bridging the gap was my biggest goal in the industry. And for the last 15 years, we've been attending a medical conference in Toronto where they have like
Hmm.
2,200 medical doctors there. We're the only natural guys there, as far as
Okay.
retailers, and we're one of the busiest booths because the doctors are also asking for the education, right? They don't
I'm
get it
sure.
readily available. So
Right.
that bridging the gap is really, really important. So the education is a constant must at
Hmm.
any touch point we have with anybody. It doesn't matter if it's a practitioner, it's a customer, it's a vendor, and even vendor community. They're always looking for new and innovative products.
Right. So, just going back a little back into the journey, since I realized that research has been the foundation of what you started with. So, you know. in terms of getting the right sources of research, like, what was this kind of research that you were bringing on for the people to understand and translating it into a language that the end customer can understand and understands, okay, what you're offering is something that can be really preventive for their health. So how did you bridge that gap of finding the right information and presenting it to the end customer just the right way? Because research language, I understand, is very technical. It's not for the common person. So
It
being a
is.
middleman there, you know.
That's not easy. So it's a multifaceted approach. When I attended industry shows, the first place I would end up going is the raw material side and meeting with
Mhm.
the raw materials and saying, what gave you the vision of creating this product, or how do you source your raw material, and why do you source it this way? So it was always learning the root of it, right? It's like we look at
Right.
turmeric that comes from India as a number one supplier, but who actually
Oh, wow.
looks for the active ingredients of raw material? Who actually looks at the lighting condition it's grown in, the just the environmental aspect of how it's affected, that turmeric, and are we just selling yellow flour, or are we selling the
Mhm.
active components of it? So it was learning from the vendors, and then also working with medical professionals and naturopathic profession, was learning what their hesitation was of looking at these products. What were they turned off by, saying, you guys don't deliver this, you don't deliver this? So then we really looked internally in our own team who could help me find that research and really understand it, and hold the suppliers accountable and say, where are you getting it from? And I would say one of the first pioneers in our industry, also an Indian guy, his name is Traj Nibber. He
Mhm.
owns a company called AOR, and
Oh,
he was one of the first ones that I can tell you that only produces therapeutic level of everything. And that really became our benchmark in saying,
mhm.
you know what, we need to somehow convey this education to people.
Mhm.
And then to simplify the information to the end consumer was not easy, because in the beginning, when I was in the stores, working in the store, sharing, I would probably turn people off because they didn't understand what I was saying or our
Mhm.
staff was saying. So we had to
Mhm.
learn how to simplify it.
Right.
And we try to do that as often as possible, but sometimes it's hard to do. But today, I would say consumers are a lot more versed with
Of
the
course.
availability of information today.
Right. So, I mean, I do understand there's a lot of awareness about natural health products today, and I think supplements is one category under that. There are various other host of different, products or categories that can be available. So, but coming from a very practical standpoint, and this is something that I've experienced in my practice as well, being a nutritionist and, helping people incorporate food as medicine. A lot of times, when I'm helping people heal, a lot of people do not realize that there is a difference between natural health products, or you call it supplements, or you call it nutraceuticals. Like, these are like same terms under bigger umbrella, and they end up confusing it with medications most often. So, for me in my profession, as much as it's important for me to guide them on the diet, it's equally important to educate them that medications are not supplements, and why supplements is something which may not give you the side effects like medication may do, and the compounds that supplements come back with. So there's a different level of education that goes in my profession, just to help people understand, okay, why supplements and why not medications, what is the difference. So before we really move on, coming from this practical standpoint, since you have been into the industry, I would really want you to speak from your experience for the listeners to understand how are supplements different from medications.
Supplements can play a big role in helping many conditions, but I think what's really important for people to understand, there is a difference
Yeah, yes,
between
Sanjiv, please carry on.
yeah, there is a difference between brand over brand. Secondly, there is side effects with taking certain supplements with certain medications. And I think that's something that's really important that people overlook. So we created a drug interaction guide where we took the major classification of medications prescribed and the
Mhm.
side effect of vitamins with those medications, because as much as these are natural, they can hinder the absorption or effects of medications and have a negative effect. So that's really, I think, front and center. People need to understand that you can't always mix the two and say just because it's natural, it won't harm me.
So, and I think that that happens a lot because, again, with a lot of people, if you see supplements just go in like candies, especially the vitamin supplements, taken anytime, whatever brand, without going through the potencies or combination of different supplements coming in together. So, yeah, I mean that's another area of discussion which I would want to take on later once we complete this question.
So when you're looking at the na- natural products, I think part of my frustration and struggle has been is we as an industry need to do a better job of conveying what the differences are. You're right. People are walking in and just assuming everything's the same. A vitamin E is a vitamin E, and vitamin E is
Yeah.
not a vitamin E. Like there's 8 different isomers of vitamin E,
Mhm.
and I
So
feel
sorry,
that
Sanjiv, please carry on.
carry on.
Yeah, please carry on. Yeah, yeah, please carry on.
Yeah, so when you look at vitamin E, there's 8 isomers. You can use it for prostate health. You can use it for cardiovascular reasons, but vast majority of the vitamin E sold out there is just one of the isomers, D alpha. And
Mhm,
I wish we did a better job as an industry conveying that type of information, because
mhm.
I would say we oversell our results because consumers think vitamin E is vitamin E, and they go and take the product not realizing they're not going to see the results because they're not buying what was actually used in the research to make that claim, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely. So I have to admit here, like, before I started going to Nature Source and buying my supplements from your stores, for me, vitamin C was a vitamin C or vitamin E was a vitamin E. But when the experts out there started talking about no, for specifically my health conditions, what is the form of vitamin C that's going to work the best? I realized, okay, it's not as simple as just picking up a supplement and just having it like a candy.
you're right. I mean, alpha lipoic is the other one as well. There's an R form and S form. And one of the things that we do is we do curate the products on the shelf by not
Hmm.
having those so that the customer doesn't have a choice. On a business side,
Okay.
sometimes it's hard because the consumer walks in and says, you're about $10 more than the average person when they're comparing vitamin E to vitamin E. But once they're
Yeah.
educated, they realize that they're getting the real deal opposed to something that just for the sake of taking it. And I've always believed in that's where we're held accountable from our customers, right? They're expecting us to do that work. They're expecting us to do that research for them. And, we as an industry just need to continue to do a better job at that.
Absolutely. So, another question that clicks me on the similar lines is like when you started, the kind of health products that uh, you were recommending or that you were, holding at your stores, are these, I mean, of course, I'm sure you must have kind of graduated a lot in terms of in last 28 years with the research and a lot of new products coming in. But what, according to you, based on your experience, were the supplement or the health food requirements back then versus what they are today? Like, do you see a degradation of overall, health of people in today's times versus what it used to be like 28 years back? And according to that, the need for supplementation getting changed for the people on a generic basis, not for any specific health condition, but on a generic basis.
So I also sit on the board of the Canadian Health Food Association, and I chair the regulatory department. One thing
Hmm.
I will share with you is Canada has probably one of the best regulations when it comes to natural products around the world. We're probably
Hmm.
used as the benchmark for other countries on how products are manufactured, how they're scrutinized, and how they're regulated. When you look at the product mix, I would say consumers are a lot more educated, a lot more aware today.
Hmm.
And I would say the kids of this generation are a lot more health conscious and aware than they were 28 years ago. 28 years ago, we were disseminating a lot more information and trying
Hmm.
to get customers and just people to listen to us and say, hey, this is what's going on. Whereas today they come in a lot more informed, which makes it even that much more exciting because they're that much
Yeah.
engaged, right? They're
Right.
involved. And I would say quality is constantly improving. And today there is a demand or a requirement from everybody to make sure that your products meet spec.
Right. Okay, so do you think like since so there's another observation that I'm coming back with. So I moved to Canada about 3 years back, and this wave of supplementation back in India, I realized because being into the same industry for so long, so yeah, I was working with some functional medicine practitioners back in India. So I wasn't aware of much importance of supplementation except for a few ones because I was a vegan, so I was consuming the important supplements that when you're on a vegan journey you should be consuming, like B12 and vitamin D, all of those. But I wasn't aware of anything beyond that. So it was only when I started working with one of the functional medicine practitioners back in India during the COVID times I realized, okay, it's a different world in itself, and we were bringing in a lot of supplements for a lot of our customers back then. So when I moved to Canada, I realized that like we have chemist shops in India, there are supplementation or health food stores in Canada. It's becoming as common here. Rather, I don't see any chemist stores anymore. I see more of health food stores or health product stores in Canada. So that in itself, talks about how the awareness is coming in, how people are getting more, trusting more of natural way of living than banking onto supplements when something goes wrong. So from the preventive point of view, where I'm coming to is that um, for a person who doesn't have, not many chronic kind of health conditions, just say common health conditions, who walks in into the nature source stores, or who's just looking for some maybe some vitamins or some basic kind of supplements. What kind of basic supplements do you think are important for such people uh, who more or less are okay in their health condition, but still should be on some supplements to make sure that they live a preventive way of life rather than getting on to some uh, cure in their later life?
That's a really good question because I think we heavily we're educated that eat three good meals a day and you'll stay healthy. But if we look at our
Mhm.
food mix, that what ends up on our kitchen tables, it's really hard to understand where it came from, how it was processed, how it was grown. And today, a lot of stuff is grown in greenhouses as well. So, in a lot of the
Absolutely.
food is transported, right? Like I know in
Yeah.
India, and even my mom and dad, they ate by season. Whereas here in North
Hmm.
America, we want our corn 12 months out of the year. We want our mangoes 12 months.
Yeah.
They come at a price. So you're not always
Right.
getting your nutritional value of what you're looking for. But I think as a preventative and just having something every day with the amount of adrenal we
Hmm.
see, stress we see, and digestive issues, for me, having a B complex is really, really important. It's a
Right.
foundation. Vitamin C, vitamin D, and magnesium. Those would be my main four. And today, what we're learning a
Hmm.
lot is even hydration. So, as much as we drink water,
Right.
I think we undervalue how much we're missing through hydration and brain fog. So, I would say I would start with those four
And
or
I would
five.
also want to add on some fiber there. I would also want to add on some fiber there.
Yeah.
That's also like one component of the nutrition family that's not given its due importance.
Yeah, and the fiber, I think people need to know how to take it too. It's like with any supplement. I
Yeah.
mean, taking the
Right.
proper and the right fiber, and that goes back to your digestive system, right? Just having good regulation
Right.
makes it so much better because your body's then maintaining itself and removing toxins that it normally wouldn't have a chance to do if you weren't.
Right. Great. So, yeah, okay. So according to you, B12, vitamin C, vitamin D, magnesium are some of the supplements that everybody more or less needs it. Like maybe the potency may vary, but everybody should consider having these, right?
It's an everyday staple, regardless of age. I would say anybody over the age of 16 should be looking
Hmm.
at just their diet and looking at what nutritional needs they need. And when even when you're looking at kids, whether they're studying, they're exercising, just having a B complex and the basics is really important.
Right. So, if we go a little deeper into the breakdown of these supplements, like we talk of B complex, I think it's simple. But when we talk of magnesium, there's so many different forms of magnesium. It's magnesium glycinate, magnesium citrate, which I see a lot of people just come in and they're just aware of the term magnesium without realizing there's another sub term there, and they would
Yes.
just pick up, okay, magnesium goes in. So, how does a person figure out, like, in the subcategories of these different forms of supplements, what is it that's best suited for them? Or is there any common one that's good for everybody?
Um, it really comes down to what you're using it for. Like when you talk about magnesium citrate, magnesium
Mhm.
citramate, there's also magnesium threonate now, which is really important for brain function, right? So it really comes down to what are you taking it for? And even when it comes to omegas like fish oils, is understanding
Mhm.
what is it you're taking it for. I would say the most common one that's taken off has been magnesium bisglycinate. And we were
Right.
one of the first ones to really even push our vendor community on coming out with a
Mhm.
cleaner label on the magnesium because originally everybody was saying it was 200 milligrams, but you couldn't get
Mhm.
200 milligrams of magnesium bisglycinate into a capsule. It was blended. So today you'll
Yeah.
see them coming up between 90 and 140 milligrams of magnesium bisglycinate. I would say
Right.
that would be the basic for generally for everyone, just helping
Mhm.
relax, better sleep, calming the muscles down. It's probably the best way to go. It's just the magnesium bisglycinate.
Mhm. Okay, so just an add-on question to this, which is again coming in from the questions that I get from my, clients as well. When you talk of supplements, so they understand the language of medicine, most of them. So the first step is, of course, to educate them that okay, medications are not supplements. Now, the next question that generally comes is, are there going to be any side effects? Because medicines do have side effects. So are there any side effects for the supplements? So what's your take on that? Like, I mean, it's a genuine question. Somebody you're taking a formula from the outside, you don't know. It's something that's your body's own thing or requirement. But I think that's a valid question. So, what's
It's a
your take on
really
that?
good question because there are side effects with supplements, right? I mean, the example I always use is we'll have clients coming in that have high blood pressure, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time they're taking a water pill, and then they're coming into a health food store and getting either dandelion root tea or they'll get
Mm-hmm.
something with high potassium in it, not realizing they're lowering their blood pressure even more. And that's why it's
Yeah.
so important that they see a practitioner as well to make sure that there's not an overlap with their prescriptions. And anything that you do too much of will have side effects. I mean, that's just simple as that.
Yeah, that's of course. Okay. So now if we talk about the vendors that are a part of Nature Signature, and I know Nature Signature, Nature Source is very particular about selecting the right vendors. I think that's one thing that's really helped build you guys the trust of the people who come to your stores. So, but I also realize that vetting the right vendors is it's a Herculean task. Finding out who's doing what and then making sure that the clean ingredients are going in. So what's your process of vetting it, the right vendors, making sure that what brand fits in well to the mission or philosophy of Nature's Source?
So we typically like to work backwards on what was the therapeutic dose used to make the claim, and does the
Mhm.
vendor have that dose? So give you an example is when it comes to omega fish oils, high EPA has been used for anxiety, depression, brain function, inflammation. And if the dose was used at 500 milligrams 3 times a day, then we're going to
Mhm.
go looking for an omega with 500 milligrams a day, opposed to carrying one that's at 50 milligrams, which won't have any results on it. So I would say we tend to push our vendors to bring us in more therapeutic dosages, opposed to what I call not therapeutic. CoQ10 is another good example. It's 120 milligrams a day is minimum required. So we tend not to
Mhm.
even bring in anything less than 60 milligrams. So that is really important. And it's also asking the vendors who's manufacturing their products, how are they sourcing their raw materials? that really plays a role. Is what actually goes in the capsule or pills is more important than anything.
Okay. So are we saying that the store is also instrumental in reverse engineering the products, like getting the requirements, understanding the research part of it, like for what specific health condition, what are the therapeutic dosages that can really bring about that shift or changes inside, and then communicating that to the vendors and the vendors producing those products. Is it like the reverse engineered process as well that goes on?
There's times where we've been part of the process.
Mm-hmm,
Give you an example, like we had a
Had
vendor
a
who had
vendor who
artificial flavors and colors in their hydration product. We waited
mm-hmm,
5 years before they took it out and brought it in the store, and then they realized they needed to take it out and said, "Look, this is not something
mm-hmm.
for us to carry." So we do try to
Right.
work with them. And the other thing that works really well for us is working with the practitioners.
Mm-hmm.
We have really good insight on what works and what doesn't work. When you have a number of
Right.
practitioners using a particular product and seeing the results, and we're able to then know that this is really working and not working. So, and then they'll work with us and call us and say, I have a patient with this concern. What do you have that can help with
Mm-hmm.
it? So that really plays a role.
That's amazing. I mean, nothing better than that, because I think in that case, the manufacturers are not ruling, but it's directly coming in from the requirements of the people on day-to-day basis, and then the products are being created, which is one thing that I did not know about your stores, which is just amazing.
And that's been one of my frustrations. It's funny. I was talking to somebody this week alone, and they asked, when picking products, do we use industry data? I
Mm-hmm.
said no, because industry data is based on just what's selling fast. It's
Generic
not
number.
real. Yeah, they're not diving into what is out there for IBS or what's out there for
Mm-hmm.
colitis, right? So
Right.
we're looking at speaking to our staff regularly on the floor and say, what are the conditions people are coming in for? What are they looking for? And what have the results been with what they have so far? So we really try to have a full circle with everybody involved in the picture of it.
That's amazing. I mean, that's something new to know about Nature Source, but that's commendable. So, on the similar lines, I have another question. Uh, I believe all the brands that the store carries are have been well vetted, and all of them definitely, I'm sure, must be using the right ingredients, the potencies that you're talking about. So how does a customer differentiate between, say, somebody is there to buy omega-3 and AOR is providing omega or essential fatty acids. Similarly, there's another brand who's providing similar potency of omega-3. So is there is it based on the requirements of a specific person, or is it the pricing, or is it the source from where the product is being made from? How does person kind of bank onto, okay, this brand is for me because it fits in into my requirements?
So I think that's where it has to be a tailored approach, because pricing is our responsibility, right? Like, so we try to position products in the store by condition. So if you're coming in for
Mhm.
memory, all the memory products are together.
Right.
And and if we see anyone is out of line on pricing for whatever reason, that's our responsibility to go back to the vendor and say, look, everybody's at this price, same quality, same everything. You got to come in line. Secondly, I think just like you and I would go see an accountant to do our taxes, or go see a pharmacist when we're picking up our medications, health
Mhm.
food or vitamins should be a similar approach. You have to talk to somebody in the store to get that type of information, because what works for you isn't going to necessarily work for your friend, or vice versa. I think sometimes we oversimplify nutraceuticals and say they work. And
Right.
the best example I use is gummies. Today everybody is trying to get into the gummy business or produce gummies, and I always say they're not
Right.
therapeutic. So people in essence say, I'm going to go take a B12, but it's one third of the dose of a real B12. They
Mhm.
take it in good intentions. They don't see the results, what they're expecting from the B12, and then they get turned off
Mhm.
by the industry. So that's where I think it's
Mhm.
really important to talk to somebody as a practitioner or somebody in the store, and even ask them what
Mhm.
qualifies them to even serve them,
Mhm.
because you're dealing with somebody's health. And secondly, it is expensive. It's not, something that is economical. You can just say, okay, I'm just going to try. You shouldn't be just trying it.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So, another question which is on basically specifically on specific health condition, which I think is very common today, which is since you mentioned memory section, like disease-wise sections in your stores. So one of the sections which deals with insomnia and sleep-related conditions. So I think that there are some products which you guys carry, which is I think L-theanine and melatonin supplements. In the women's health section, a similar category which would be like hormonal substitute for hormonal supplements, like women dealing with PMS, so which is related to hormones, but there would be some products, functional products that would be available which may help deal with the symptoms. So my question is typically for the products which have a direct interaction with the hormones, whether it be the sleep hormone through melatonin or feminine hormones through these functional products which can help them soothe down. So, based on my understanding about hormones, from a holistic perspective, I understand that hormone supplements can be very symptomatic, can provide symptomatic relief of the symptoms that are arising because of the imbalance. But balancing hormones is completely a different approach. It's not treating. It's just it's giving you that symptomatic relief, and also that hormonal supplements should not be taken for long because of its side effects in the body because of the high dosages. So what's and this is just for my understanding, because this is again one common question that I come across with working with a lot of women, and especially for the ones who are dealing with insomnia, sleep related conditions. So melatonin, when such kind of supplements are introduced to a person which have a direct interaction with the hormones, is it safe to take because it is in a supplementation form and not in a medication form? So what's your take on that?
The simple answer is I'm going to say no, because you can't take melatonin on a regular basis. One of the
Mhm.
questions I always ask customers is, have they tested their serotonin levels, right? What is the cause of the insomnia? What is the cause of their sleep deprivation? Like, I'll take melatonin 2 or 3 times a week when I know I've had a long day and I just want a deep sleep. But taking it on a regular basis is not important. This is where it really comes down to the importance of working with practitioners, right? Like, even when
Right,
you're talking about women's hormones, there's estrogen, progesterone. We could sway a person one way or the other very easily. Whereas if somebody's actually managing their blood work and managing their hormones, then you can be very strategic about giving them the right supplementation. And that's what we
right,
find is working with the practitioners really puts our mind at ease when we end up sending someone to a practitioner, say they specialize in women's health. Just like you're saying, digestive health or cardiovascular health, having a good practitioner is really, really important. Look, even with what you do with yoga and meditation, even in your circle, when you build a practitioner network of somebody who treats digestive health or sleep issues, it just, you'll see how much more your clients will appreciate that relationship, and seeing how much faster they get to the
absolutely.
results.
Right. No, that's nice because yeah, I mean, I think that that's quite a valid question. With a lot of awareness coming in, a lot of people want to know if it is hormonal stuff, is it going to interfere with my natural hormones? So that was the reason, I really wanted to clear up that question. Moving on to my next question. So coming to the initiatives that the store is taking as of now, I know you're very active in, Canadian health circles and, creating a lot of awareness, being a visionary. So in terms of so I think you've really set up a nice, very beautiful infrastructure, which is complete in its own self. Somebody comes and talks about supplements, and there's a whole team to guide them. Beyond that, does the organization have any other plans or expansion plans in terms of bringing the holistic network coming in together, in terms of helping people adopt a lifestyle that's beneficial for them, along with a set of supplements that can be complementary to their way of life, either through education or through events or any other ways? Like, what are the future plans for the organization?
I hate to say that, I like to go back to what we used to do in the past. And when I say that, prior to COVID, we used to do in-store lectures. We used to do consumer events. We used to have practitioners come and meet and greet clients. And I would say after COVID, it's been a bit of a hit and miss, and we're trying to figure out today what the best way to reach consumers and educate them is, and even practitioners. So in the past, we would hold dinner trainings or seminars for practitioners alone from
Mhm.
vendor community that we could use to educate the practitioners. And so today, I think it's just going back to normal now, where we can get back into holding the wellness days of having consumers meet practitioners. Sometimes they don't even know these practitioners exist. So when you're
Right.
out there promoting them, then there's that more of that interaction. So I think we're going to go back to doing a lot more of the interfacing with the customer as far as education and seminars.
That makes sense. I think that's important. That's the reason I asked this question as well, because education, I believe, is one part of it. But when you directly engage and are there in the journey of a customer, guiding them either through some infrastructure that you create, that kind of a transformation, is a different level transformation beyond education for sure. Okay.
One thing I will share with you, I think as an industry, I think even practitioners really need to educate consumers on what they do, because as a general consumer, and I was the same way when I came in the industry, I didn't know the
Mhm.
difference between a naturopath, a nutritionist, a
Absolutely.
herbalist,
I agree.
a homeopath. So I think we assume people know who we are and what we do, and it's no different than us as a company. We constantly have
Mhm.
to educate our customers on what the difference between what we do and what others do. So it's really important that practitioners not be afraid to say what they do, because a lot of people don't know what you do.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I think you've brought me to a very beautiful question, which I think I missed out in my set of questions. So, and this is again coming from the practical experience. I tell you what, um, um, coming from this space, and plus during COVID times, I worked with functional medicine practitioners that opened up my awareness about health products and supplements. So when I came to Canada, I was quite aware, okay, and not to the extent that I'm now, but I was quite aware of the this wellness aspect, or this wellness part of the industry, part. So, in my own circle, for a lot of our family and friends based out in Canada, when I used to speak to them, that was my like first line of contact, of course. And when they used to, have any health conditions, or when they were guiding us, okay, you're new to Canada and which places you should be going for medical stuff and all of that, because of that awareness, it was like a reverse education or awareness that I was giving to them, that okay, why do you know to need to go to a medical practitioner? I mean, there's so many alternative options available in Canada, and I knew that from my research also. And I don't know if you're aware of that, but um, since back then when I was looking for the practitioners to interview for my podcast, and I was looking for naturopaths, it was such an awareness for me that 70% of the naturopaths I found in Canada. And so that's where I realized, okay, the hub of alternate medicine, it's huge in Canada. It's just that I don't know, it doesn't come to the limelight, or people don't know about it. But and when I started working with your store also for like a few months, I realized that it's powerful, and with host of those, people coming in together into the same space. And I cannot tell you how many people kind of educated or informed about that. Okay, if you have this condition, please go to a doctor later. Please go to the store. This person is amazing. He or she has amazing information, and they have, that information from these people have worked. Like it's worked for me, it's worked for my family, for our friends, even for my mother who recently suffered a brain stroke. I had been speaking to Connie. She's really helped me kind of create a host of supplements which really helped her heal. So it's beautiful, and you rightly said that it's important to speak out that we can help.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes we just take it for granted that everybody knows. I can tell you, I have a lot of family and friends. Initially, they had no idea what we did. They just know we
Mhm.
owned a store, right? But they didn't
Right.
realize the intricacies behind how it can help. And just we have to create more of awareness ongoing. I don't think that's ever going to go away. Canada, we're very, very lucky that we have the Naturopathic College. They are
Right.
very well respected, do a great job. And I think overall, vast majority of practitioners in this industry really do it for the right reasons. They care, they want to help. but they got to do a better job of letting the general public know they're there, because a lot
Absolutely.
of people don't know how to seek them out.
Don't know.
You and I drive down the street, we'll see a sign for a medical office, we'll see a sign for a dentist, but we'll never really see the signs of, a natural
Naturopaths.
practitioner that easily.
Absolutely, I agree. I agree. And the irony is that Canada is the host of, I think, about more than half of the naturopaths or wellness, I would say the alternate wellness experts educated in the modern understanding of wellness. I'm not talking of the traditional side. Of course, India is quite high on that in terms of Ayurveda and yoga, but modern understanding of the problem and providing solution from a modern perspective, still keeping it all natural. That industry, I think, exists in Canada more than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, we're very progressive. We've done a really,
Yeah,
really good job here.
yeah. Okay. So, my last few questions, and I think one of the important questions that I would really want to put across is around women's health, because that is something that idea is very close to me. So, in terms of especially those perimenopausal years and menopausal years where the transition is happening in a female's life, um, in most cases, a female is recommended HRTs, which is, hormonal replacement therapies. But, I do realize that a lot of supplement support can really help them deal with the symptoms in a preventive way rather than going the HRT way. But again, for a lot of people, when you speak to them in that specific age category, you realize that the only term that they know to deal with the symptoms is HRT. At least
No,
in my network, I come across a lot of women, if they're going through any of such symptoms, the ultimate solution that they would know is, okay, HRT is something that's really going to help. So, but I do realize there are a lot of people doing really good job in terms of offering some preventive stuff in that area. So, from your store perspective, and of course from the general understanding also, from that perspective also, what do you think, just bringing in certain supplementations as a preventive way early on in before you get on to those years, do you think that can help people really be more balanced in their hormonal health during those years and help them save HRT, which of course can be the last resort, but is there something that nature source carries that can really help such women?
there are a number of products, but again, I think I would rather we tailor them very specifically to the person. I
Of
wouldn't say
course,
there's
that's there,
anything
of
general.
course. Yeah.
Um, I think having a milk thistle is very, very important as one of the main things that just helps regulate your liver, and that will regulate your hormones. So milk thistle
Right.
would be one of my safest ones. There's chase tree as well. I just hesitate when it comes to hormones. Like I said, I always struggle with what is the issue? Is it estrogen? Is it progesterone? And we're dealing with it
Mhm.
at home today with Mona. And you know what? Even her, she's now seeking the help of a naturopathic doctor who is
Mhm.
taking her blood work, again, keeping
Mhm.
her off the HRT because she hasn't needed it yet, because we can treat
Mhm.
it naturally.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, again, the idea of putting across that question again was that there are two ways of managing, your health in those years. One is preventive. The other one is you don't change yourself. Your diet remains the same. Your lifestyle remains the same, but you bring in some part of supplements which can help you manage your symptoms, and that can delay the problem. But someday you might need HRTs, which in my space of yoga, I come across a lot of women who are going for HRTs, thinking that's the
That's
last
the
resort.
only
But
option. That's what they think,
that's
and
yes.
unfortunately, that's all they know, and this is where I was saying to you, I think if a practitioners in the natural side need to do a better job of really coming out and saying that we do have other options, and also that goes down to also educating the medical community, right? That these
Hmm.
alternative
Right.
treatments are available.
Absolutely. Great. So, my last question is going to be around some, as we discussed earlier, also some absolutely important supplements that we just discussed. B12, vitamin D, especially vitamin D is what I would want to talk about, because again, that's something that's an absolute must, I believe. Again, I realized that when I started working at your store, and then I realized, okay, what's how it can really save you from a lot of health conditions in a preventive way. So, but there's a lot of confusion around vitamin D. There is one set that understands that, okay, going for this 60,000 IU, which is the standard dose that a lot of people take, like, one sachet a week. I don't know if that's the same standard back in Canada, but that's a standard which is quite often very commonly used in India, where it's a powdered sachet of 60,000 IU, which a lot of people now just take it like a candy. They realize, okay, my vitamin D is less, and they take that 60,000 IU in a week, either in a month or a week, depending how deficient they are. Versus what I realized in Canada was that there's a far better understanding of vitamin D here, and the dosages need not be weekly; they can be taken every single day with
Daily.
with with of course the right IU number of right potency going in. So that's a little confusion. If you could just help me clear out that, because I come across people from both the sections. One section would say, okay, I have been taking 60,000 IU once in a month or once in a week, versus somebody who says that I take it daily, about say 5,000 IU. Um,
I would
what's
say
your understanding on that?
I prefer to just say take it daily, twice a day, 2,500 IU's. You're in good place. And as well, in Canada specifically, we have test blood work for vitamin D,
Yeah,
and that's another thing. I think sometimes you don't realize how low you are. And I've heard stories over and over, people suffering depression,
right.
digest. There's so many issues vitamin D impacts, and they don't realize how low they are until they actually do the blood work. And so initially, you do have to ramp up, and taking 5,000, 8,000, 10,000 IU's of vitamin D, and then bringing it down once your vitamin D levels are in place. And that's why I always go back to blood work. I think blood work is so important, but on
Absolutely.
every day, especially here in Canada, taking vitamin D is important on a daily basis. And it's also it
So
helps with hormones.
it does, definitely, yes. I mean, the problems that you're talking about, I mean, I have personally experienced also when I got a little up on vitamin D and the kind of change, especially some balance in my moods. I could immediately sense that, keeping me more stable. But is there any side effect of being high on vitamin D if you're taking it like on a daily basis, or you go in for some time on a high dose and then maybe bring it down, or give it a stop and then start back again? So what should be the approach for vitamin D?
I would definitely say use your blood work to measure it. If you're fine, then just take an everyday low dose of vitamin D3. And if you're low, then do ramp it up until it's back to normal.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, I think that makes sense. That's quite logical. I mean, just go by what your body tells you inside.
Yeah.
Great. So, Sanjeev ji, I think I'm done with my question bank. Of course, I may have a lot of other questions as well, but I don't have that much of a time. So maybe some other time. But is there anything that you would want to end the session with, something that you think I should have asked and, I just missed on to?
I think what you do is so important with the yoga. One of the things that I would just say, it's globally, we become a very pill society. We think a supplement or a prescription is going to fix us. When you look at even your own journey through yoga and meditation, that piece is as much important as a supplementation. And you know what?
Absolutely.
I went through that running my business, raising two kids through hockey, and just being busy, and not realizing how important the physical exercise and meditation is so important. And there was a time where when went back to exercising for almost 22 months, and me telling my trainer, I don't miss coming here. Now I would never miss a session, because I know the day I'm not there, whether it's the aches and pains, whether it's my mind going into different worlds, it is so important to blend it to. A healthy lifestyle with exercise is so much more important than just taking supplements. So that is, I think, what you also got to emphasize is how important is what you do. And I think that helps us help our customers even more.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you brought that up. Just to end the session with some information. So I'm studying with one of the most traditional yoga teachers that exists today, directly from the lineage of Sri T. Krishnamacharya, who's considered to be the founder of modern yoga. So so my teacher is like 80 plus, 85 plus, and he's spreading out this wonderful information from the yoga text, like the very traditional yoga text that a lot of people, even from the yoga fraternity, may not be knowing. So these texts were like the secret texts that this teacher revived, T. Krishnamacharya. So in our morning session today itself, the lecture that we had today morning, where he specifically mentioned the importance of breath. So he was just telling us that what is mentioned in the yoga texts about your body, each and every part of the body is defined wonderfully in those texts, which in no other yoga text is defined. So he's taking us through all those shlokas and Sanskrit verses. So today's session was about the breath, and how there are five different kinds of forms of breath. Once you take your breath in, it converts into five different movements of breath: downward movement, upward movement, sideways movement, overall body movement, and how the movement of this breath decides what's going on in your digestion, what's going on in your space of elimination, what's going on in space of different body functions. So what he said that when we talk of the physicality, which is my digestion is not right, my elimination is not right, and you start to take all those foods or supplements or medication, that's okay, that's something that your physicality needs. But the push for your body to be able to function better at all those levels is coming in from that breath, which is converting into five different energies in the body. So the downward movement, it could be elimination, it could be menstruation for women, it could be delivery for pregnant women. So everything where your body needs downward pressure is initiated from the apana vayu, which is the downward force, and that comes in through your breath. So what he was saying was, we take everything seriously except our breath, which is a regulator of everything else inside the body.
I'm laughing and smiling because that's all I've heard for the last 3 years from my trainer. And I was having some back issues, so I went to go see one of the therapists he works with, and I thought he would work on me. He spent literally
Mhm.
15 minutes telling me how to breathe, and I got frustrated. And I said, I didn't come here for being taught how to breathe,
And I
but
can
you
tell
don't
you
realize
this
how powerful it is.
absolutely. And just to add on, since we're talking of this, so I'm also teaching yoga at Movati at the moment. But Movati has its own yoga teaching pattern, so they have their own, exercising. Like even if you're teaching yoga, they have a structure to it. So when I started teaching there, I brought in my traditional understanding. So I was doing a lot of breath work, aligning breath with the flows. Of course, I was keeping their flows, but I was bringing in my add-on, especially from the breath perspective, stillness perspective, holding perspective. So a lot of people, and in my class, most of it were like immigrants or Canadian people, very less of people from India who could understand what I was teaching. I think few of these people went to my manager and telling that, okay, we're not understanding what kind of classes are these and what's going on. So my manager had a word with me telling me that, okay, you're not teaching your yoga, you're teaching Movati yoga. And this is what our people understand. So just try to stick to the pattern and try not to bring in those modifications. And I can tell you what, till the time I was doing my modifications, there was a lady who was coming in. I think she must be late 50s or early 60s. Just after four yoga sessions that we did, in the fifth session, she came to me and she told me that I don't know what we are doing in your classes, but by the end of the day, generally my pulse rate is higher, and every day I have to take a medication for my pulse rate. But in last 4 days, my pulse rate hasn't gone up in years. Just in
Wow.
4 days, just with the breath work, her pulse was down. So I just told her, why don't you go and tell Mowati that these are some of the practices that we would want, so that it really helps us beyond physicality, beyond our muscles, beyond our bones, beyond our physical structure. So yeah, I mean, I do understand, that kind of information or knowledge is something that has to be really spoken about. It's not very natural, and things are beyond only foods and supplementations.
I think sometimes we get stuck with what is hot right now, what is exciting,
Trends,
and you know
trend.
what? I've learned sometimes you just gotta take the high road. Say it's not for us. There was a product that was being sold for cellulite years ago when we first opened, and you had to buy 3 boxes. It was like $350, and I refused to carry it because I said there's nothing that fixes cellulite. And
Hmm.
we had to take the high road, and you won't believe how many customers came back months later and said, you know what? I respected the fact that you didn't carry it and sell it to me. And we used to send them to our competitors. They go buy it there, they have it in stock. And I think what you're saying is so important. Like what and the depth is so important but not everybody can keep up with it or understand it. And that's
Absolutely.
part of, I think, what your goal has got to be, and like ours, is constantly share that message.
And keep it simple.
That's hard, but we try.
Yeah, of course. Great. So thank you so much, Sanjeev ji. I think
Thank
wonderful
you so
conversation
much.
with you and sharing those insights with us. Thank you so much and have a nice day.
You
We look
too.
forward to
Appreciate it.
seeing more change, more growth coming in for Nature Signature, Nature Source. Looking forward to the sources of information that you keep bringing in.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye bye.